Today I'm talking about Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. The book was written by J.K. Rowling in 1997 and adapted for the big screen in 2001. I've gotten several requests to review Harry Potter, so today is finally the day. Hey there, I'm Jessica, and this is Bookshelf to Big Screen. If you're new to the channel, I take a look at books that have been adapted to the big or small screen and compare the differences between the two. So if you're the kind of person who loves to know what changes were made in the movie or if the book really was better, be sure to subscribe. In case you haven't heard of Harry Potter in the last couple of decades, he's a young boy who finds out he's a wizard and gets to go to an awesome magical boarding school, but also finds out there's a super evil wizard who's out to get him. So let's get into it. The movie starts on Privet Drive, where Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall meet Hagrid and baby Harry. Dumbledore leaves Harry on the doorstep of the Dursleys' house with a note, telling McGonagall that he'll be safer there. The book starts off following Mr. Dursley as he observes strange things happening throughout the day. The big difference with the baby drop-off is that Hagrid's motorcycle just falls out of the sky instead of gliding in for a nice landing, and that he asks Dumbledore for a minute to say goodbye to Harry. In the movie, Harry is now 10. Dudley shouts for him to wake up because it's his birthday and they're going to the zoo. The Dursleys make Harry sleep in a cupboard under the stairs and treat him like a servant. Mr. Dursley threatens not to feed him for a week if there's any funny business at the zoo. At the zoo, Harry starts talking to a snake, who seems to understand him. Dudley knocks Harry out of the way, and Harry looks mad. The glass suddenly disappears, and Dudley falls into the snake habitat. The snake crawls out, says thanks to Harry, and then leaves. The glass reappears, and the Dursleys freak out because Dudley is stuck inside. In the book, Harry only gets to go to the zoo because the Dursleys have no one to watch him. Dudley's best friend is also with them. Mr. Dursley's threat is to lock him in the cupboard until Christmas, and Harry reflects on the strange things that always seem to happen around him, like the time he was running away from Dudley and suddenly ended up on the roof of the school, or when Mrs. Dursley cut all his hair off and it was back to normal the next morning. At the zoo, Dudley doesn't get stuck inside the habitat. He and his friend just jump back when the glass disappears, and the glass does not reappear. In the movie, when they get back home, Mr. Dursley locks Harry in the cupboard. Later, when Harry picks up the mail, he sees that he has a letter. As he's about to open it, Dudley grabs it from him and gives it to his dad. More letters come, and Mr. Dursley destroys them all. This happens for several days, and he's finally happy on Sunday, thinking no mail will come. But then letters start shooting into the room through the chimney. Harry manages to grab one, but Mr. Dursley doesn't let him read it and announces that they're going far away where they can't reach them. And we see a tiny house on a rock in the middle of the sea. In the book, when Mr. Dursley sees the address on the first letter as the cupboard under the stairs, he tells his wife that he's worried they're spying on them. He continues to destroy the letters, but after that first letter, he moves Harry into Dudley's second bedroom. It also takes them a bit longer to get to the house in the middle of the sea. They stop at a hotel first, where they get 100 more letters, and they do a lot of driving before Mr. Dursley decides on that little house. One last thing here. Before Harry gets the first letter, we find out that Dudley has been accepted into private school, but Harry will only be going to public school. In the movie, while they're out at sea in the storm, Harry is wishing himself a happy birthday when the front door is broken down. Hagrid walks in and bends Mr. Dursley's shotgun when he threatens him. Then he mistakes Dudley for Harry until Harry steps out. Hagrid gives Harry a birthday cake and then uses magic to light a fire. Hagrid tells Harry that he's a wizard and gives him his acceptance letter to Hogwarts. Hagrid is angry when he finds out that the Dursleys told Harry that his parents died in a car crash. Dudley sneaks off to eat Harry's cake, and then Mr. Dursley insults Dumbledore. Hagrid gets so mad he gives Dudley a pigtail. The Dursleys run to the other room, and Hagrid and Harry leave. In the book, Hagrid sees and recognizes Harry right away. When Mr. Dursley threatens him, Hagrid ties his shotgun into a knot and then tosses it into the corner. The book doesn't specify that happy birthday is misspelled, but later on, Hagrid does tell Harry that he can't spell. Hagrid doesn't let anyone see how he lights the fire, and he also makes tea and cooks sausages, which he shares with Harry. Hagrid is mad as soon as he finds out the Dursleys didn't tell Harry anything about who he was or about the letter that Dumbledore left with him. Mr. Dursley shouts that he forbids him to tell Harry anything, and that's when Hagrid tells Harry that he's a wizard and gives him the letter. Then Hagrid sends an owl with a note to Dumbledore saying he got there okay. When Hagrid hears about the car crash lie, he tells Harry what really happened to his parents and how Voldemort tried to kill him too, but couldn't, and that's how Harry got his scar. Dudley doesn't try to eat Harry's cake, but Hagrid does give him a pigtail when Mr. Dursley insults Dumbledore. Hagrid and Harry actually stay the night there and then leave the next morning. In the movie, Hagrid takes Harry to London to buy his school supplies. They go into the Leaky Cauldron, where people recognize and fawn over Harry. Professor Quirrell is there, but he won't shake Harry's hand. They go into Diagon Alley, and Hagrid takes Harry to Gringotts to get some of the money his parents left him from his underground vault. Hagrid also has to get something from another vault for Dumbledore. Hagrid tells Harry not to tell anyone about the package they picked up for Dumbledore. Later, Hagrid sends Harry to get his wand while he runs another errand. In the wand shop, Ollivander has him try a couple of wands, but each one causes some kind of small explosion. When he gives him the third wand, it seems to make Harry glow. Ollivander tells him the phoenix that gave the feather for his wand gave one other feather, and that wand belonged to Voldemort. Hagrid gets Harry an owl as a birthday present, and later, Harry asks Hagrid if Voldemort was the one who killed his parents. This is when Hagrid tells Harry about Voldemort and how his parents actually died. Then, Hagrid drops Harry at the train station and goes to deliver the package to Dumbledore. In the book, Professor Quirrell is not wearing his turban yet, and he does shake Harry's hand. Riding the rail car in Gringotts makes Hagrid sick, so he asks Harry to get his uniforms while he goes to have a drink to settle his nerves. While he's getting fitted for his uniform, Harry meets Draco Malfoy for the first time. They're not properly introduced yet, but Draco reminds Harry of Dudley. Later, Hagrid tells Harry that he wants to get him an owl for his birthday, and they go shop for it together. In the wand shop, Hagrid is with Harry. Ollivander has Harry try a bunch of wands, but none of them do anything. And when Ollivander finally gives Harry his actual wand, red and gold sparks shoot from the end. When they're done shopping, Hagrid sends Harry on a train back to the Dursleys because there's still another month before school actually starts. In the movie, Harry is trying to find platform 9 3/4 when he overhears a lady saying something about muggles. He asks her how to get onto the platform, and she tells him to run at the wall. On the train, Ron asks if he can sit with Harry. When Harry says who he is, Ron asks about his scar. The snack cart comes by, and when Ron says he's okay with his sandwiches, Harry buys out the cart. Harry tries a chocolate frog, but the frog jumps out the window. He gets a Dumbledore card from the box. Hermione shows up and asks if they've seen Neville's toad, and then waits to see Ron try a spell. When it doesn't work, she tells them that all the spells she's tried have worked, and shows them by fixing Harry's glasses. In the book, Harry has to ask his uncle to drive him to the train station, and he only agrees because they have to go into London to have Dudley's pigtail removed. Mr. Dursley walks him into the station, but only to laugh at him about how there isn't a platform 9 3/4, and then he leaves him there. Harry has trouble getting his trunk onto the train, and Fred and George Weasley help him. They see Harry's scar, confirm who he is, and then go tell their mom. When Ron goes into Harry's compartment, Fred and George come back and introduce themselves and Ron to Harry before they leave again. Ron tells Harry all about his family and how everything he has is handed down to him from his older brothers. Harry tells him how he had to wear all of Dudley's old clothes and they bond over this. The movie kind of makes it seem like Harry only buys snacks because he feels bad for Ron, but Harry is just really excited to have money to spend for the first time in his life. Also, he's really hungry because he was still living with the Dursleys and he hadn't eaten. He offers first to swap for one of Ron's sandwiches, but he really is happy to share because he's never had anything to share or anyone to share with. When Harry opens the chocolate frog, it doesn't jump out the window. And the Dumbledore card has a mini biography on it saying why Dumbledore is famous. Later, Hermione does watch Ron try his spell, but she doesn't fix Harry's glasses. Draco comes by with Crabbe and Goyle to check out Harry Potter. When he insults the Weasleys and Hagrid, Ron and Harry get up to fight them, but Ron's rat bites Goyle and they run away. In the movie, when they get to Hogwarts, Hagrid takes them on boats to the school. The kids are mesmerized by the castle. Inside, McGonagall greets them and tells them they'll all be sorted into the 4 schoolhouses and leaves for a minute. This is when Draco tries to court Harry, but Harry shoots him down, and McGonagall returns before anything else can happen. Dumbledore makes some announcements saying students should stay out of the forest and the 3rd floor corridor. The sorting ceremony starts and Hermione, Ron, and Harry are all put into Gryffindor. Harry gets weird vibes from Professor Snape. While everyone eats, some ghosts show up and they all seem pretty silly. In the book, the boats take them under the castle to an underground dock. They see the ghosts before they get sorted, and some of the ghosts are pretty scary. There's also a ghost called Peeves who's featured throughout the whole book, but completely absent from the movie. The Sorting Hat has a whole song it sings about the sorting process and the different houses. They sort the kids in alphabetical order, so Ron actually goes after Harry. When Harry sees Quirrell, he notices that Quirrell is wearing a turban now. Dumbledore only speaks after the sorting. He welcomes them and then says a few nonsensical words before they eat, prompting Harry to ask if he might be crazy. After dinner, Dumbledore gives the notices about the forest and the 3rd floor, but he also announces the school Quidditch tryouts. Then everyone sings the school song to the tune of their own choosing before they leave. In the movie, Percy shows them to the dorms and tells them to watch the staircases because they like to move. Harry stays up his first night looking wistfully out the window. Later, Ron and Harry are late to class and McGonagall transforms from a cat, catching them. We see them in Snape's class next. Snape calls Harry out, asking him a bunch of questions he doesn't know, but Hermione clearly does. In the book, Harry has a nightmare his first night where he's wearing Quirrell's turban and it's talking to him, telling him to change houses to Slytherin, but he doesn't remember the dream when he wakes up. On their first day of school, Ron and Harry get lost and Filch catches them trying to open the door to the 3rd floor corridor, and Quirrell just happens to be right there and rescues them. So there's a lot of foreshadowing that you can really pick up on when you're reading it for the second time. Harry and Ron were not late to McGonagall's class, and she doesn't turn into a cat in front of her class. In Snape's class, Harry tells him to ask Hermione, and Snape takes a point from Gryffindor for Harry's cheekiness. In the movie, the owls are shown bringing packages to students while they're in the Great Hall. Neville gets a Remember All, and Harry reads about the break-in at Gringotts in Ron's newspaper. He tells Ron and Hermione that the vault that had been broken into was the same one he went to with Hagrid. Later, they're learning how to ride brooms. Neville loses control, flies into the building, falls from a great height, and breaks his wrist. While the coach takes him to the nurse, Draco takes Neville's Remember All, threatening to hide it. Harry goes after him and threatens him, but Draco throws it, and Harry catches it just before it hits McGonagall's window. McGonagall comes out and takes Harry to see Oliver Wood. She tells Wood that she's found him a new seeker. Fred and George congratulate him, and then Hermione tells him that his dad was a seeker too. In the book, Harry gets an owl from Hagrid at the end of his first week inviting him to tea. Ron actually told Harry about the break-in when they were on the train, and he reads the article at Hagrid's, but it doesn't say the vault number. Neville's broom episode isn't as exciting. It goes straight up and he falls off, and then the broom drifts off into the forest. When Draco throws the ball, Harry catches it a foot from the ground, barely stops his broom, and then falls gently to the ground. When McGonagall gets there, she sounds like she's furious and cuts off a few students who try to defend Harry. Harry thinks he's going to get expelled. McGonagall takes Harry and Wood into a private room to tell Wood about the catch Harry made because she wants to keep it secret. She tells Wood that she thinks Harry is better than Charlie Weasley. They also talk about having to get Harry a broom, and McGonagall says that she'll talk to Dumbledore to make an exception about the rule that first years can't have their own brooms. And McGonagall is the one who tells Harry that his dad played Quidditch and that he would be proud of him. In the movie, the kids get lost in the castle and end up in the third floor corridor. They run into Mrs. Norris, so they try to hide and end up in the room with the three-headed dog. They barely get out, and Hermione tells them that the dog was standing on a trap door and guarding something. In the book, Draco challenges Harry to a wizard's duel at midnight in the trophy room. Ron goes with Harry, and Hermione tries to stop them, but she gets locked out of the dorm, so she has to go with them. They find Neville, who also got locked out, and he goes with them too. They hear Filch and realize that Draco set them up, and they try to hide. The trophy room is on the third floor, and this is how they end up in the room with the dog. When Hermione tells them about the trapdoor, Harry realizes this is where the package from the vault is being kept. In the movie, Ron has been annoyed by Hermione since they met, but when they're partnered in class, it pushes him over the edge. After class, he's talking trash about her, and she overhears. At dinner, Harry asks where Hermione is, and Neville says he heard she's been crying all day in the bathroom. Quirrell comes in and shouts there's a troll in the dungeon and then passes out. Dumbledore tells the prefects to take their houses back to the dorm while the teachers go to the dungeon. Snape rushes off in a different direction. Harry remembers Hermione, and he and Ron go to find her. The troll gets to the bathroom before they do. Harry manages to get onto the troll's shoulders and shoves his wand up its nose. Ron uses a spell and knocks the troll out. McGonagall, Snape, and Quirrell show up, and Hermione takes the blame. Harry notices Snape's leg is hurt. The next day, Harry tells Hermione and Ron that he thinks Snape was trying to get to whatever Hagrid took from the vault, which he knows must be what the dog is guarding. In the book, both Ron and Harry are annoyed by Hermione and rude to her on various occasions. They overhear another girl saying that Hermione was crying, and they start to feel bad about it. When Harry and Ron go to find Hermione, they see Snape headed to the third floor. The troll fight pretty much happens the same way, but the biggest difference is that the book tells us how from this moment they were all truly friends, because going through that kind of experience together makes it hard to dislike someone. Harry sees Snape limping outside later and goes to get a book that Snape had taken from him earlier. That's when he sees Snape showing his leg to Filch and talking about the dog. This is when Harry tells the others that he thinks Snape is after what the dog is guarding. In the movie, Harry gets his first owl, and it's a new fancy broom, just in time for his first Quidditch game. Harry sees Hedwig sitting with McGonagall and realizes that it's from her. During the game, Harry's broom starts going crazy, and Hermione sees Snape mouthing a spell. She sneaks under the stand and lights Snape's robe on fire and then leaves. Snape knocks down Quirrell while trying to put out the fire. Harry gets back on his broom and manages to catch the snitch. in his mouth, and Gryffindor wins. In the book, Harry gets his broom before the troll incident, and it has a note from McGonagall telling him not to open it in front of everyone. When Hermione goes to set Snape's cloak on fire, she knocks Quirrell over when she runs past him. Also, her fire spell is some little blue flame that she collects back into a jar, so Snape won't figure out it was her. In the movie, the kids are telling Hagrid that they suspect Snape, and Hagrid reveals the dog is his. He also accidentally tells them that what the dog is guarding is between Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel. Later, Hagrid is carrying a tree into the castle, and it's time for the winter break. Harry and Ron are playing wizard's chess. They're both staying at Hogwarts over the break. Hermione is going home, but she reminds them that they need to be looking in the library to find out who Nicholas Flamel is. On Christmas Day, Ron wakes Harry up to open presents in the common room. Ron is wearing a sweater that his mom made him. There's a note on Harry's gift saying that the item used to belong to his dad, and Ron tells him that it's an invisibility cloak. This is the only gift that Harry opens. In the book, they have several conversations with Hagrid about suspecting Snape, but he does reveal the bit about Nicholas Flamel after the Quidditch game. Hagrid carries the tree through the castle and happens to be in the hall when they get out of their potions class, so he invites them to the Great Hall to see the decorations being put up. Harry, Ron, and Hermione have already been spending all of their free time in the library trying to find out who Flamel is, and Harry is certain that he read about Flamel before, but he can't remember where. He's also been trying to figure out a way to get into the restricted section, thinking that a book in there might have information on Flamel. Ron teaches Harry how to play chess over the Christmas break, so Hermione is not there, and the chess pieces actually speak to them. Harry wakes up first on Christmas morning, and their presents are at the foot of their beds. Harry gets a flute from Hagrid, a 50-pence coin from the Dursleys, and a sweater and fudge from Mrs. Weasley, and then he opens the cloak. Ron recognizes what it is before Harry even puts it on, and they don't see the note until after Harry put it on. Fred and George come in wearing their sweaters and make Ron put his on, even though he doesn't want to because he doesn't like the color. Also, Fred, George, and Percy's sweater all have their first initial on them, but Ron's and Harry's don't. In the movie, Harry uses his cloak to sneak into the library's restricted section. Filch nearly catches him, but he manages to sneak past. Harry runs into a hall where Snape is threatening Quirrell. Filch tells them that a student is out of bed and they all hurry away. Harry sneaks into the nearest room where he finds a mirror that shows him with his parents. He wakes Ron up to show him, but Ron only sees himself as head boy and winning the Quidditch Cup. Later, Harry is sitting alone looking at the mirror when Dumbledore appears. He tells Harry that the mirror shows the deepest and most desperate desires of the heart. He tells Harry he's going to move the mirror and not to go looking for it again. In the book, Filch runs straight to Snape because Snape wanted to be notified if anyone was in the restricted section. Harry sneaks into the room before they walk past him. Harry doesn't see Snape talking to Quirrell until after the second Quidditch game, which isn't in the movie at all. After the game, he sees Snape walking towards the forest and follows him on his broom, flying above the trees to avoid being seen. When Harry looks into the mirror, he nearly screams because there's a whole bunch of people in the mirror. It's not just his parents, but all of his extended family too. When he brings Ron the next day to see the mirror, Ron doesn't want to stop looking and they start arguing loudly, attracting the attention of Mrs. Norris. They manage to hide under the cloak before she sees them, but they leave thinking that she'll call Filch. Ron tells Harry that he's got a bad feeling and asks him not to go back, but he does anyway. Dumbledore is already in the room when Harry goes back, and he's so obsessed with the mirror he doesn't even notice him until he starts speaking. In the movie, Hermione finally finds the book that has the information on Nicholas Flamel. They learn that he was the maker and owner of the Sorcerer Stone, which turns metal into gold and produces the elixir of life. They go to tell Hagrid they know about the stone and still think Snape wants to steal it. Hagrid tells them Snape is one of the teachers trying to protect it and that no one could get past his dog because only he and Dumbledore know how. Hagrid is also a little busy trying to hatch a dragon's egg. Ron says his brother Charlie works with this kind of dragon. Draco sees them and rats them out. McGonagall takes 150 points from Gryffindor and gives them all detention, including Draco, because he was out after hours. In the book, Harry remembers that he read about Flamel on the Dumbledore trading card after he gives Neville a chocolate frog. Then Hermione remembers that he's in the book that she's already checked out. This is also when the second Quidditch game takes place, which is cool for 2 reasons. Ron and Draco fight while Neville takes on Crabbe and Goyle alone, and Harry quickly catches a snitch, ending the game after about 5 minutes. It's also worth noting that in the book, Dumbledore wasn't at the first game, and it was kind of a big deal that he was actually attending the second game. Also, Snape refereed the second game. Both of these things happened only after Harry's room was cursed in the first game. The kids run into Hagrid at the library and try to ask him about what else is guarding the stone, but he tells them to be quiet and go see him later. Ron figures out that Hagrid was in the library looking at books about dragons, which piques their curiosity. Later, Hermione flatters Hagrid and gets him to reveal that he, Professors Flitwick, McGonagall, Quirrell, Snape, and Dumbledore each took part in protecting the stone. The Dragon Saga takes several days in the book. The kids stress out about Hagrid being caught and thrown out of Hogwarts because having a dragon is illegal. Draco catches them with Hagrid when the dragon hatches, but sits on the information for a while. They convince Hagrid to give the dragon to Ron's brother, Charlie, to release it back into the wild and arrange a pickup at night from the tallest tower. Ron gets bitten by the dragon and his hand swells up. Draco goes to see him in the hospital wing to make fun of him and ends up finding out that they're going to smuggle the dragon out of Hogwarts. McGonagall catches Draco out of bed while he's trying to catch Harry, and he tries to tell her that Harry has a dragon, but she doesn't believe him. Harry and Hermione get the dragon to Charlie's friends, but they forget the invisible cloak at the top of the tower and get caught by Filch. He takes them to McGonagall, and she's also caught Neville, who overheard Draco and was trying to find Harry to warn him. In the movie, they're taken to serve their detention with Hagrid in the forest. Hagrid is sad because Dumbledore sent the dragon off to Romania to be with its own kind. Hagrid has to find a unicorn that has been hurt. He splits them into groups. He takes Ron and Hermione with him, and Harry goes with Draco and Fang. Draco and Harry see something drinking the unicorn's blood, and Draco and Fan run away. Just before the hooded creature gets Harry, a centaur jumps out and chases it away. Firenze tells Harry that it was Voldemort drinking the unicorn's blood and hints that Voldemort could really use something like the Sorcerer's Stone. Hagrid and the others show up and Firenze leaves. In the book, Harry, Ron, and Neville losing 150 points for Gryffindor was a really big deal. Pretty much the whole school hates them because it means that Slytherin is going to win the House Cup, and Harry vows to stop meddling. One day, Harry overhears Quirrell crying and being threatened, and he thinks it was Snape, even though he didn't see him. When they serve detention, Harry first goes with Hermione and Hagrid and meets 2 other centaurs. Hagrid rushes off to help Neville and Draco, but it turns out that Draco was just messing with Neville, and that's when Hagrid puts Harry with Draco. When Firenze saves Harry, he lets Harry climb onto his back to take him back to Hagrid quickly. The other 2 centaurs show up, and they're crazy mad that Firenze would let a human ride on him. They also don't want him to give Harry any information because they don't think they should get involved in human affairs. The centaurs can read the stars, so they apparently know what's coming. But Firenze realizes Voldemort being back affects them all, so he tells Harry that it was Voldemort. In the movie, Harry tells Ron and Hermione that Voldemort is back, so they think Snape is trying to get the stone for him. Hermione reminds them that Voldemort is afraid of Dumbledore, so as long as he's around, Harry's safe. Harry realizes that the person who gave Hagrid the dragon must have been trying to get info from him. Hagrid realizes he told the stranger how to put the dog to sleep, so the kids run to tell McGonagall that they need to tell Dumbledore somebody is going to try to steal the stone. She tells them that Dumbledore had to go to London, but that the stone is safe. They decide to get the stone themselves before Snape can get it. In the book, Ron is waiting in the common room when they get back from the forest, and Harry fills him and Hermione in on what happened in the forest. Harry also finds his cloak in his bed with a note that says, "Just in case." The kids go looking for Dumbledore directly, but realize they don't actually know where his office is and ask McGonagall when they see her in the hall. When they run into Snape, they send Hermione to follow him while Harry and Ron guard the third-floor corridor. But Snape loses Hermione and Filch catches Ron and Harry and runs them off. That's when they decide they need to get the stone themselves. In the movie, Neville tries to stop them from going out and risking more points, but Hermione uses a spell to keep him out of their way. When they get to the dog, a harp is playing music and the dog is sleeping. They have to move its paw to access the trap door, but the dog wakes up just as they jump in. In the next room, they're trapped by vines. Hermione tells them to relax. Harry does and is released, but Ron is still panicking. Hermione remembers the vine hates sunlight and uses a spell to free Ron. In the next room, they have to catch a flying key to open the next door. As soon as Harry touches the broom, all the keys start chasing him. He catches the key and tosses it to Hermione. She opens the door and he flies through and they lock the rest of the keys out. The next room has a giant chess set and they have to play their way across. Ron sacrifices himself so that Harry can get checkmate and they win. Harry tells Hermione to take care of Ron and then get a message to Dumbledore. Harry goes alone to the final room where the mirror is. In the book, the harp is there, but it's not playing on its own. Harry uses the flute that Hagrid gave him to put the dog to sleep, and he hands it to Hermione to play so that he can jump down first. Hermione quickly jumps off the vine to the wall before it traps her. She remembers the vine likes it dark and damp, so Harry tells her to light a fire. She uses the same spell that she did to light Snape's cloak. In the key room, they each have brooms, and the keys don't chase them. Ron and Hermione work together to corner the key so that Harry can catch it. The chess game is the same, except the queen knocks Ron in the head with her arm, and the king throws down his crown in front of Harry when he loses. Also, Hermione goes on with Harry. There's 2 more rooms that are not included in the movie. The next room is the one that Quirrell set up, so it's a troll, and he's already knocked out. The last room before the mirror is Snape's test. Fire appears ahead of them and behind them, so they're stuck inside. There's 7 bottles on a table. 2 are wine, 2 will help them, and 3 will kill them. They have to solve a riddle to figure out which bottles they need. Hermione solves the riddle, but the potion that will get them through to the next door only has enough for 1 person to drink. So Harry tells her to take the other potion and go back with Ron and send a message to Dumbledore. He takes the potion and goes into the final room alone. In the movie, Harry is surprised to see Quirrell. Quirrell tells Harry that Snape was actually trying to stop Quirrell the whole time. Quirrell can't figure out how to get the stone, and a voice says to use Harry. Harry sees himself put the stone in his pocket, and then it really is there. The voice tells Quirrell he wants to speak to Harry, and when Quirrell takes off his turban, Harry sees Voldemort's face on the back of Quirrell's head. He knows Harry has the stone in his pocket, and Quirrell makes a ring of fire to keep Harry from getting away. Voldemort says he'll bring back Harry's parents if he gives him the stone. Harry refuses, and Voldemort tells Quirrell to kill him. He chokes Harry, but when Harry touches him, his hand crumbles. Harry puts his hands on Quirrell's face, and he disintegrates. Harry picks up the stone, but then Cloud Voldemort runs through him and knocks him out before leaving. In the book, Quirrell immediately traps Harry with ropes. He tells Harry that Snape does hate him because he hated his dad, but that he was actually trying to protect Harry. He also tells him that Voldemort decided to keep a closer watch on him after he failed at Gringotts, which is why he wasn't wearing the turban until later. There's no fire in this room. I think the movie just uses that as a reference to the room that Snape set up. Quirrell grabs Harry's wrist first, but lets him go because it burns his hand. He tells Voldemort that he can't hold him, and Voldemort says to kill him. This is when Harry reaches up and grabs his face, but Quirrell doesn't turn to dust. He does get badly burned and blistered, but the process causes Harry blinding pain from his scar, and he eventually passes out. In the movie, Harry wakes up in the hospital wing. Dumbledore tells him that Ron and Hermione are okay. He says that he and Flamel agreed it was best to destroy the stone. Dumbledore says Quirrell couldn't be touched by Harry because he was touched by love when his mother sacrificed her life for him. In the book, Dumbledore tells Harry he realized he needed to go back to Hogwarts as soon as he got to London, and he arrived just in time to stop Quirrell before Harry would have been killed. Harry tells Dumbledore that Voldemort said he only killed his mother because she tried to stop him from killing Harry, so he asks Dumbledore why Voldemort was trying to kill Harry in the first place. But Dumbledore says he'll tell him later when he's older. He also asks Dumbledore if he knows who sent the cloak. Dumbledore says that Harry's dad left it with him, so he thought Harry might like it. Dumbledore also tells him that his dad saved Snape's life once, so Snape probably helped Harry so that he could feel clear of the debt and go back to hating his dad. In the movie, at the end of the year banquet, Dumbledore announces all the points and Slytherin is the winner. But then he hands out some last-minute points. He gives Hermione points for her cool use of intellect, and Ron points for the best game of chess, and Harry points for outstanding courage. This ties them up with Slytherin, but then Dumbledore gives points to Neville for having the courage to stand up to his friends, and Gryffindor wins the House Cup. In the book, there's only a couple of small differences here. Ron is the first to get points. Then Hermione is awarded her points for the use of cool logic in the face of fire, because she solved the riddle and literally had to walk through fire. The movie ends with them boarding the train to leave. Harry goes to say goodbye to Hagrid, and Hagrid gives him a photo album with pictures of his parents. Hagrid tells Harry that if Dudley gives him a hard time, he can always threaten him with magic, because he doesn't know Harry's not allowed to use magic outside of Hogwarts. In the book, Hagrid gives Harry the album while he's still in the hospital. He tells him that he wrote to all Harry's parents' friends, asking them to send any photos that they had of James and Lily. The book ends with them all arriving at King's Cross Station in London. Ron invites Harry and Hermione to come stay with him during the summer. Ginny is excited to see Harry because he's famous, and Harry thanks Mrs. Weasley for his Christmas presents. The Dursleys are there to pick up Harry, and Ron and Hermione are shocked by how unpleasant they are. But Harry tells them it'll be alright because they don't know that he's not allowed to use magic at home. It's been several years since I last read this book, and I was really surprised by how much I had forgotten. It was fun to go back and notice details that were callbacks in later books, like the rumor of dragons being used to guard Gringotts, or Hagrid saying that he had been expelled from Hogwarts. There's also fun details like Hagrid knitting on the train, or how silly Dumbledore is. At the Christmas dinner, he wears the flowered bonnet. Dumbledore is just super serious the whole time in the movies. I had also forgotten that Neville had a more prominent role in this book, which they really kind of take away from him in the movie. Overall, I had a great time rereading this book, and I'm really glad that I did. It's one of my favorite series, and while the movies are great, these books are really just so much better. Well, there you have it. That's my recap on Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone and the 2001 movie adaptation. I've included links to both the book and the movie in the description below if you'd like to revisit the series too. If you enjoyed this review, please click like and be sure to click subscribe to see my next video. Thanks for watching.